Welcome to the Track Talk Podcast, an in-depth look at popular songs. My name is Matty Margallo, and I'm a singer, songwriter, producer, and a music lover. I'll be your guide as we talk about this week's track, the legendary, trend-setting, rock and roll pioneers, the Rolling Stones, Can't You Hear Me Knockin'? Every episode, we're going to provide you with analysis on a track from a music production and lyrical level to its social significance and legacy. But it won't be just me yapping at you about music. We will also have a weekly guest host to help me do it. This week, we have guitarist, singer, songwriter, human jukebox, and NFC East rival, Brian Dillon. Brian, how you doing, man?
Doing good, Matty. How are you? Fellow NFC East rival fan.
For those of you who are not in the know, and you totally shouldn't be because it's super lame, is NFC East is a division in the NFL where two teams reside, the Dallas Cowboys and the Washington Redskins. And Brian's a fan of the Cowboys. I'm a fan of the Skins. That makes us rivals, but in fact, I think we're pretty good friends. So
yes, and it could be worse. You could be an Eagles fan. That wouldn't have
these
worked.
guys. But I call you a human jukebox because when we first kind of started jamming and stuff, like over at the open mics, you showed me like this list on your phone of like 100 songs that you knew and that you could just play. So that's why I called you the human jukebox on that.
And I appreciate that. And actually, that was one of the first and only, as far as I know, musical nicknames I've gotten was a friend in college, and they told me, it was like, oh yeah, a couple of us call you Jukebox.
I love that. That's kind of cool.
I loved it too.
So no one calls you that?
No.
Guess what? Jukebox.
And actually, you know what? They told me, this was 2 years after I left college and I came back to visit. They're like, that was your nickname the whole time. Why did you tell me I had a cool nickname like that?
That's a rad nickname.
Yeah.
So let's kind of back it up. Why don't you give us just a little bit of like background on your on kind of like your musical background, kind of how you started and kind of how you got into it?
Well, you know, always a lover of music but kind of very specific taste when I was a kid. I loved Michael Jackson and Elton John. That was who I loved to listen to. But never really had the desire to pick up that instrument and play until I was about 16 or 17. And I started playing guitar and piano at the same time. Did both those for about a year and a half, mostly self-taught, though. I think if I would have been taught, I think I'd
be a little further along, you think?
Yeah, I don't think I think I still would have gone down the same progression I have. I think I would have gotten there a little faster.
We're using like tabs and like kind
a
of
lot of tabs.
Online,
yeah, a lot of tabs, and I was big into sheet music too. I just love like the look of it, the aesthetic of it all.
And that was tabs or like actual like musical notation?
It was tabs, but what starts happening is, like if you're getting tabs out of like a sheet music book, like a Hal Leonard published book or whatever, they're going to have the sheet music right above it. So after seeing it all this time, I was like, oh, like what does this mean? What does that mean? And I learned the notes early on, also because, you know, for the piano, there's
not really a tabbed version,
No.
So you do have to kind of know how to read music.
Yeah, so it was the piano learning the piano that got me to learn like, okay, what the notes mean. But it wasn't until after a few years of playing guitar, maybe about 4 or 5 years in, after seeing this sheet music paired with the tabs for so long, my brain and my ear finally did math, and I learned how to read rhythm, and then
kind of connected the dots.
Yeah,
excellent. Yeah, you whenever you play at the open mics that we met at. You're always doing these great arrangements too of these songs, and sometimes you'll forego singing like the first verse and you'll actually do an instrumental of the first verse, which I think is a really cool way to do it. What kind of inspired you to kind of do arrangements very specifically the way you do them?
Well, I think it's a couple things. The first one is there's so many songs that I've loved and listened to over the years that aren't guitar based. You naturally are just forced to create your own arrangement. So I think part of the arrangements I create is kind of out of necessity of the fact that I don't want to just learn the chords and just strum them, but yet, like I'm thinking of the recording I did or the arrangement I did of Lionel Richie's Hello. there is a guitar in it, but it's not really guitar bass. So you kind of,
it's a piano bass track.
yeah. And so you kind of force yourself, okay, if I'm going to learn this song and if I want to capture all the melodies, you just kind of have to learn the ins and outs of the chords and the notes in it, and you know, to make it sound really full. And then the arrangements I do specifically with having that first verse just be an instrumental, that's part of that influence is I like to sing. I don't feel I'm the best or a great singer, so I do that to kind of lengthen out the song and kind of reduce the singing I have to do.
Right.
And then the other thing too is I love a lot of like pop jazz songs from the 20s and the 30s, and the ones that start to feature vocalists on their recordings, you'll find that a lot of them, the first minute and a half is just an instrumental, and they're playing the hook or the chorus or whatever. And I always liked that idea of having a song where just the instruments themselves draw you in for a minute and a half. You know, you hear this melody, you get this mood, you follow the story, and then the singing comes in. It's kind of like, oh yeah, forgot about that.
Yeah, the arrangements, the way you put them together are real great. So, you know, if you're ever around Glendale on a Sunday night, drop by the Oak and Vine and catch Brian, because he's really good. And you might actually catch our one of our former guests, Mark Nishimura, playing too. So you might see some future guests there too.
And you might even see
Tasneem will play there.
Tasneem as well.
Yeah. So.
And then Matty hosting the track talk.
I will show up once in a while, and if I'm sober enough, I'll play. Did you play any bands or anything kind of coming up when you said you played kind of late high school into college, I would guess?
Yeah, I would say that I started playing with people, you know, like in a jamming or band context. That was probably in college, and I was never in a formal band, but I always seemed to find people to play with, whether they were guitarists or it was a bassist. I had one friend who he played drums, the drum setting on a keyboard, and so that was our band. I think that's the closest.
Was he any good? Because some people are like really killer at playing like drums on keyboard.
He was good. I think there were a few extra little hi-hats that he probably could have used, but he did it awesomely though. It was always kind of the same beat. Everything turned into kind of like an Al Green song. It just kind of had the same backbeat. So, but yeah, you know, doing that, but I especially love to play with or collaborate with singers, because it's just, I love to really just focus on the guitar and then kind of do all the melodies there. So that's why, you know, like when I play with you or Tasneem, I enjoy doing that a lot.
Essentially like accompaniment. Yeah.
Letting someone else do the singing.
In fact, like a couple of weeks ago, we met that girl at the bar, and just randomly kind of just like she asked me about, like, do you know these songs? I was like, I don't know those songs specifically, but you know, Brian upstairs might. And this girl was just like in town for the weekend, and she's like, she ended up being a really great singer. And
her name was Angelina.
Yeah. Her and Brian like just played like two songs. Which ones?
We did "Summertime" in the Sam Cooke version, which is a very specific version, and she hadn't heard that, but she went
picked
along
it
with
up.
it. Yeah. And then we did "Love Is a Losing Game." Amy Winehouse.
Yeah, she had that style of Amy Winehouse. She was very, very good.
Yeah.
Hopefully she'll come back, because I would listen to her all day. I think that's just a thing with like great singers and great musicians, and just that collaboration. If you just have a good ear and you're willing to trust, you can put together some really cool stuff even without much rehearsal or any rehearsal at all. And I think you guys proved that the other night when you guys did that. It was really cool.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what kind of made you want to talk about the Rolling Stones, and specifically Can't You Hear Me Knockin', that song?
Well, the Rolling Stones were and they still are my favorite band of all time. And I've liked them. They've been probably my favorite band for the last 10 years. And when I first started playing guitar, I was really into them, and you know, they're the band I've seen the most live. You know, they're my favorite band.
How many times have you seen them?
4.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy when you see a band and 15 years ago and people were making jokes about how old they were and they're still
they're
playing
still
now.
going.
Yeah.
Well, when was the last time you saw them?
2013 in LA, where they actually played Can't You Hear Me Knocking.
Gotcha. At Staples.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, chose them because they were one of my favorite bands, my favorite. And then Can't You Hear Me Knocking, because I've always felt that was one of their best tracks, one that showcased their musicianship, how tight they were at that time. This is a song from 1971, which was in a 4-year period where they were, I feel, at their best. And it's just a song that a lot of people know, but not everyone knows, and it's a real quality song, and it captures up what I love the most about them.
I can absolutely tell you right now, I hadn't heard the song before until this week when you asked me that you told me you wanted to do this song. Mm-hmm. So I went and checked it out and loved it, by the way, and we're gonna get into that more in a second. But I do want to say, and this may be a shock to a lot of the Track Talk podcast listeners out there, but I don't know that much of the Rolling Stones catalog, except maybe just kind of the real famous hits. Not like I know say the Beatles catalog kind of pretty well. I can name you a bunch of their tunes. I can maybe name about 5 Rolling Stone tunes, but every time I've heard them, and I just kind of let it on the Spotify playlist when I was kind of on the way here, just kind of let a couple of Stones tunes go, and I was just like, gosh, I should absolutely listen more to Rolling Stones, because they go through that same kind of journey that the Beatles did of these kind of poppy kind of rock tracks, with that kind of, where theirs is a little bit more blues influenced. I think that's pretty obvious to say, especially early on. And then they kind of get into this later era of these kind of really grooving just tunes, and it's definitely a different path than say the Beatles went. When they got into this time, and in fact, the Beatles didn't make it to the 1970s.
And that's the thing is like, if like this song, "Can't You Hear Me Knocking," if you were to have stopped their career right there, then it's about the same length as the Beatles,
right?
But then 1971, they had another 8 years of still making songs that people know and love today.
Right.
But yeah, they were around for a while. I mean, they're still around.
They're still around. Are they still actively putting out new records at this point, or it's more just like doing the tours and playing the
last
hits?
album they put out was in 2005, A Bigger Bang, which corresponded with the tour. But other than that, that aside, in the last 14 years, it's just been 2 or 3 new songs that are paired with the greatest hits collection.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And for them, I think that's enough. They've probably got enough money to live out the rest of their days.
Oh yeah.
So I think, hot take, I think the Rolling Stones are gonna be just fine. They're pretty talented guys.
I think they're gonna survive the changing trends in popular music.
Yeah, I think they'll be okay. I want to kind of get into this track. Can't You Hear Me Knocking came off the Sticky Fingers album. It's their 9th British album, 11th U.S. album. So that's
good distinction.
Yeah. Which I thought was interesting. So I guess there's just some tracks they did here in the U.S. or albums they did here in the U.S.
During the 60s, their output was, theirs and the Beatles and a lot of those bands.
It sounds like it's annually at this point.
And he was even more so than that. So a lot of times that's kind of why you have some of that happen is that they were just releasing so many.
Right.
They had the luxury to be like, make that kind
That's
of
a really incredible thing when you're looking at bands nowadays. It takes like years for a band to put out their next record, and I wonder if that's a lot because of the touring thing, and they're doing the tour thing, and then they come back from the tour and they're like, I don't want to hit the studio right away. I don't know. And then some artists are just dropping stuff out of nowhere too. I mentioned earlier, like Beyonce just dropped that record out of nowhere, and that was like, oh, okay. I didn't realize she was even working on anything, So it's like, I feel like it was different. It was like back then, it was like every year, new album.
And I think the key is you have to ride on tour if you're going to
Gotcha.
produce that album. Because when you read about the Rolling Stones, they still even brought recording. It was back in the day when recording equipment wasn't
has to be it. Actively, and then probably as they're on tour, they're workshopping these songs and they're probably playing them out on out on stage, and it's like, here's a new song we're working on. They play it, get the crowd reaction. that makes absolute sense to me. So, this one looked like Mick Jagger, Keith Richards were kind of the main guys on this particular record. Produced by Jimmy Miller, a fairly frequent collaborator of the Rolling Stones.
Especially during that sweet time,
Specifically
68
during
to
that
73, 72.
And I looked into Jimmy Miller just to see who else he's worked with. And Jimmy Miller was the producer behind Gimme Some Lovin', the Steve Winwood track. Great tune. Love that track. Love Steve Winwood. And then he was also behind that supergroup Blind Faith with Steve Winwood, Eric Clapton.
Oh.
Also some other notable bands, Primal Scream and Motorhead. So there you go. Lemmy is
Motorhead.
What's the line from Airheads? Who's God or who's better, God or Lemmy? And they're like, he was asking Harold Ramis. Oh God, this is gonna. I'm cutting this from the thing. No, it's Steve Buscemi and Brendan Fraser. They're testing Harold Ramis, who's pretending he's some like A&R exec. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm explaining this right now. And like they're like, who'd win in a fight, Lemmy or God? And he's like, God. They're like, no. Lemmy, no. They're like, wrong answer. Lemmy is God. And that was the bit.
I just remember from that movie, Adam Sandler's character goes up to like this guitarist and this black guy who's a guitarist.
Right.
Like, we're gonna cut this, right?
Yeah, we're cutting all this. I'm cutting all this.
He comes up to this guitarist, this black guy, like in the because the studio they took over, right?
Right.
And then he's like trying to get on his good side. He's like, hey man, I love Jimi Hendrix. I remember the guy was like, step off my dick, man.
Airheads, so good. I'm officially recommending that. That's a Track Talk podcast recommendation right there. Go see Airheads. Brendan Fraser, Steve Buscemi,
Lone Rangers.
The Lone Rangers is the name of the band. So good. Adam Sandler. Oh man, Corbin Burnson. Oh man, everybody's in that. Tony Montana is in that.
Montana.
Oh my God. That will be cut right now, so leave room for edit. Wait for that airplane. The album was released April 23, 1971, so that's exactly what we're talking about. Kind of mid 71 this record came out. They recorded it in London at Olympic Studios in London. But you mentioned which record did you say they did in France?
The album after this one, Exile on Main Street, was recorded in this countryside mansion that Keith Richards was renting out in France.
And that was because?
Well, they liked this idea of the Stones of going somewhere to record an album, like going away. And France specifically, I guess at the time, the tax rate in England was so high, something like almost 90%, depending on the wealth bracket you were in.
Wow.
And I guess it would have like choked away all their finances, all their,
for the record,
good hard-earned money that, went to drugs and all that other fun stuff. And so Keith is like, hey, I've got a mansion out in France. Let's go do this. And
that's rad.
Yeah.
Kind of going into the song, I pulled up a little quote here from Keith Richards. Can You Hear Me Knocking came out of flying. I just found the tuning and the riff and started to swing it. And Charlie picked up on it like that. And we were thinking, hey, this is some groove. So it was smiles all around. For a guitar player, it's no big deal to play the chopping staccato burst of chords very direct and spare. In my head, I'm imagining that Keith Richards accent, and I'm sure it would take much longer to read that quote if I did it
throwing like a raspy chuckle every now and then.
Notable personnel on there: Keith Richards, obviously Mick Jagger, Mick Taylor on guitar for that period. Mick Taylor's on guitar,
cannot be forgotten.
Mm-hmm. Rocky Dijon on congas. The great Bobby Keys on tenor sax.
Yes.
From John Mayall.
He was not. No, he was from Midland, Texas. Mick
Taylor
guitarist.
on John Mayall's band. And then the great Billy Preston on organ.
Yeah,
I love
the
Billy
fifth
Preston.
Beatle.
Yeah. So that was kind of the the personnel involved on that, and when you get to that last part of that track, that's when you hear those other guys really kind of getting their time to shine, and it's really dope. It's really freaking cool. This particular track, and I guess now that I mention it, it starts off as kind of this kind of, I don't want to say standard, but it's kind of like a very straight up like rock, like Rolling Stones rock song. That would first 3 minutes, first maybe 2:45, something like that.
That would be very fair to say.
Yeah.
And as a huge Stones fan, when I first heard this song, I think I kind of went past it. It's on a great album, Sticky Fingers. There's a lot of great rockin' songs on there, great ballads, great country sounding songs. This was another rock song. You hear that intro and it sounds like a real, true Stones song. And right. I love those, but I think I was like, oh, okay. I get what they're trying to do there. Let me move on to the rest of the album. It wasn't until later on that a friend of mine really told me about it that I went to check it out. And it's really the first 2:45 of the song. Mm-hmm. I love a rockin', it gets me every time. But everything after that, the next 5 minutes, I forgot the song length, but the next 5 minutes when it turns into this extended kind of movement, part jam that really I love.
That's maybe the part that makes this song.
I would definitely
very
agree.
Special. And it would be easy to sit there and think, okay, they're just rockers, it's just kind of guitar riffs and stuff, but man, it's really musical. And from a musician standpoint, it's a pleasure to listen to, I thought. Very grooving, and like the solos that they take between the saxophone and the guitar stuff is really like tasty stuff that you don't hear in rock records. And I thought it was just a real pleasure. So I think also you picked this because you knew I would be super into it, just knowing kind of like my taste in music too.
Yeah, I knew you
liked it. As we always do, we like to kind of run down the lyrics for this. I'm not going to go too long in this because there's a lot of
no need to.
There's a lot of the music. There's a lot of the music stuff we want to get into, but we've both agreed that a lot of these Stones tunes lyrically, there's some substance, but it's a lot of kind of flash and stuff in it.
I think I've told you this before, but I'm one of those people who I don't really listen to lyrics. Mm-hmm. I obviously you can't. You couldn't throw a song at me that was just about pooping your pants, and I would just be like, oh, okay with it. But generally, I don't listen to the lyrics. I think that's why I've always liked the Stones. And this song, it kind of echoes that point. It's like, the lyrics, they sound nice when you're saying them, but if you really think about it, either they're not saying anything or whatever the message is, it's kind of like,
It's lyrics for the sake of something I've mentioned before called what I would call like phonetics, the way they roll off the tongue, the way they sound with the music, and this song kind of expresses that. Although there are some great Stones tunes with really great lyrics out there too, and I was just listening to a couple on the way in, like you get what you need, you can't always get what you want. Like the lyrics for that are really good. So it's like there are some really great tunes, but some of these are really just a means to an end as far as just like, let's get the song together, have Mick Jagger sing, have him dance around, let me do the guitar riffs. Like I get it, but we'll go through this fairly quickly. Can't you hear me knocking? Yeah, you got satin shoes. Yeah, you got plastic boots. Y'all got cocaine eyes. Yeah, you got speed freak jive.
You make it sound like there's more to it there when you read it.
I'll tell you what though. I think it's very surface level, but it's kind of cool. Satin shoes, plastic boots, cocaine eyes, speed freak jive. Like they sound good. It's just cool shit that like Mick can stay on stage, right? Isn't that kind of what that is?
It just, with his delivery, with his kind of sing, kind of shout thing that he does, like it just works. It's nice like 2-3 word pictures in your head. They're just like showing you pictures of things.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. It's a little bit of visual, but we're not getting the full story. Although we get a little bit more story once we hit this next section. Can't you hear me knocking? Can't you hear me knocking on your window? I'll take that again. Can't you hear me knocking on your window? Can't you hear me knocking on your door? Can't you hear me knocking? down your dirty street, yeah? And what I'm getting out of this is Mick has just been kicked out of his lady's house. That's really what this truly sounds like to me. He's banging on the window, banging on the door, trying to get himself back into there. So I just really enjoy this. And now they hit the chorus. Help me, baby, ain't no stranger. Help me, baby, ain't no stranger. Help me, baby, ain't no stranger. And it's over a different chord progression there. So that's kind of like a cool repeating part that they have with the kind of background vocals.
Yeah.
They get in that second section. Can't you hear me knocking? Are you safe to sleep? Can't you hear me knocking? Yeah, down the gaslight street. Can't you hear me knocking? Throw me down the keys. All right, now he's trying to get in. He's locked out. He obviously messed up at some point
and that sounds like the member of the Stones lifestyle in the early 70s.
That sounds exactly right.
Just having fun, coming home too late, girl's already asleep.
Yeah.
She probably told him,
He's
don't come
home late.
Don't come home late, and that's about it.
It's really good. Hear me ringing the big bell tolls. Hear me singing soft and low. I've been begging on my knees. I've been kicking. Help me, please. So it's pretty obvious. I can see him just shouting this from the street. Just like, can you hear me knocking? Like, just like up to the window. Hear me prowling. I'm gonna take you down. Hear me growling. Yeah, I've got flatted feet now. Hear me howling and all around your street now. Hear me knocking all around your town. Okay, that one doesn't.
We're sticking with the feeling and we're going with it.
It doesn't link as much to the other lyrics. It kind of midway through, there's a bit of a story in there, which I dig. But at the end of it, it feels like these lyrics are a bit of just kind of it's kind of like how I think of French fries. It's just a way for like more ketchup to get into my mouth. That's all they are in this particular song.
Hey, they have a singer in that band. He can't, because the Stones have only had one official instrumental song. That was a song that they recorded in the early 60s. That was the address of Chess Records. I think it was 2142 Michigan Avenue. The address may not be right, but yeah, Mick Jagger's gonna sing in every song.
He has to.
He's got to talk about something.
So those were the lyrics of "Can't Hear Me Knocking." Like I said, I think he got kicked out of his house, or at least is just completely locked out. So he's just trying to get back in. That's all.
That is fair. I won't challenge you on that.
Let's go into another section of the podcast. Something I like to call song basics, and I got a little surprise for you, Shaun. Here we go.
Basic songs, you got the song, basic songs. Do.
Yes, that's right. I've extracted the the song basics melody that Mitchell did in the last podcast, and I've turned it into our official song basics drop, which I've been begging for since we've started this podcast. So there you go, song basics. I'll put that up. We'll put that up on the page for you guys to listen to that at your leisure. You were asked earlier the runtime for this song, 7 minutes 15 seconds.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. Considering Keith put his guitar into completely G major tuning, this song is in G major. That'd be my absolute guess. Does that sound about right to you?
The key of the song?
Yeah.
It is actually in D.
D?
I believe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was just, the open G was just kind of, you can just slap a capo on it and then you can change it to something else. So,
gotcha.
Yeah.
And time signature 4/4.
Yeah.
Very straightforward. So, okay, so I was 2 for 3 on the song basics. At least we got the intro now. So, let's go through the production of this, and I know you're gonna got a couple things you want to talk about. Right at the top, it starts out with that really great guitar riff, that Keith Richards guitar riff. There's a bit of like a drum kind of thing going that comes in, and the bass line comes in. That guitar is really kicking.
And this is
really kicking.
And the way this song starts out, quintessential Stones type of song. So the one thing that you'll notice with Keith Richards, especially at this time in the Stones' career, was that it was his guitar that was kind of leading the rhythm on a song. You know, when they had a longtime bassist, Bill Wyman, who was with them from the beginning until 1989 or 1990. He left. He'd been with them for 30 plus years. He was
just tired.
He had enough of that. We got a new bassist, a bassist who they've had ever since then, Daryl Jones. And when he first played their first show, apparently it was just terrible. It was awful. And it was him. And what he said was, I didn't get it until that first show. But what makes the Stones work is that we follow Keith. He leads the rhythm and we follow him. Because typically in a band, you know, the
drum and bass,
you know, you know, you're leading off the drums, you're going off the, you know, everything kind of channels off of that. But with the Rolling Stones, it's that guitar-based Keith Richards riff to lead the song that they start off of. So this is the quintessential Stones song in that it starts off with this riff, which I'll play now in the key of open G.
Here we go.
Which sounds extra cool when you play it on a guitar that's in open G.
Yeah, it sounds good. It's man, these Stones tunes all have that like that classic like blues like chugging with the where you know where you guitar players know where you're playing the chord and then you do the pinky to give you that extra note on the every other strum. And it's so great. I love their stuff.
And by the way, as a fan of the Talk Track podcast, I must say, I love it when you get nerdy with the guests, Matt. I really do. Because every time listening, I'm like, yeah, they're right. Can't forget about the third and the fifth.
Yeah. Well, I love that you decide to kind of help break down the song on the guitar. I think that's such a cool concept. And I think that might be something we'll take a little further for the next couple pods and see how the crowds react. Because I think that's a cool thing. Plus, it gives you a little preview of Brian's guitar playing, which obviously is very, very good.
Thank you.
So that riff comes in. Real funky bass line comes in too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Played by Bill Wyman, who gets overlooked a lot, you know, because you've got a band
Keith,
like the Rolling
Mick,
Stones.
Yeah.
Keith, Mick. Maybe you think of Charlie Watts on the drums, but you know, he was a mainstay there, and he had a way of playing these bass lines that were just very complimentary with. Keith's going to start, Charlie's going to come in, Mick's got his thing he's doing, you know, what can I do to fill in those gaps?
There is something that I've mentioned before on the podcast. Specifically, you need to have something, especially in bands, specifically in bands, when you're playing these tracks and tunes, you need something kind of just straight and normal and just tasty. And I mentioned it before when I apologized to the police and Sting. I said they were lunkhead bass lines. They're not. Yeah. I'm so sorry, Sting.
That was the first moment on this podcast series that made me laugh.
They're not lunkhead bass lines, but simple. Like, so you can have more complex stuff on top of it. I think that's key. And not that the bass line is very super simple, but it's just enough and it's not overstepping its bounds, because the real star of this particular track, at least at the beginning part, is that guitar riff.
Yeah.
Right? So they go in, vocals start, rhythm guitar jumps in at the verse too. And Taylor playing rhythm guitar, I would imagine on the left side. That's what it sounded like. And when I say left side, right side, we were talking about the panning that they did, because we listened to the song on headphones just now, and it sounded like Keith's guitar was on the right and then Mick's guitar was on the left. So it was cool to hear the two kind of working together.
And just as a guitar player, you love that, because when you're trying to learn and you want to learn someone's part, you just put one of those phones behind your ear, and then you can
put one back,
isolate that. Yeah, it's great.
Gets into that, and that's basically the same instrumentation all the way through that chorus where they do change the chords. Yeah. Then they get into the second verse. kind of into the same kind of instrumentation. Addition though, organ and sounds like organ and piano too. They have added in there, and kind of once again that's that thing. And I always, when me and Shaun are working on tracks and stuff, I'm like, let's always make sure we're introducing something new on every section, so your ear, especially as a listener, perks up and you go, ooh, it's something new. It's something just different. It doesn't need to be anything in your face, but it's just enough to, cool, my ear isn't tired yet. And I think that's a really smart thing in that production.
And with this song and a lot of Stone songs, there's a lot of songs that the chords aren't really that tricky or complex. So you have to continually add more layers, add a different, feel, a characteristic to that track. And
they did a really good job of that. I'm guessing Jimmy Miller was kind of probably the mindset behind that. Just kind of, let's bring in Billy Preston on organ and get him on this. And they kind of really put together something really cool for that first, about 2:45, 3 minutes of the song. And then they hit that last line of the song, "Hear Me Knockin', and all you around your town," and boom, they hit the downbeat for that kind of breakdown section, and it's the congas, percussion, and guitar, and this guitar doing this really cool like riff thing. Do you know that riff part on the guitar?
I sure do. So they've got the the percussion kind of holding it for a few seconds, and then the Keith's guitar comes in and goes. That repeats, and then Bobby Keys, their longtime saxophonist from the early 70s till the mid 70s, who tours with them now still. He comes in with this real tasty,
super tasty.
So,
there's only the only word I could describe it is tasty.
Just yummy morsels,
delicious and tasty. It's so good, and that goes into a full kind of like solo section for the sax, and it's dope. And that goes on for
and so at some point, and it's hard to define unless you're listening to it, the mood of it changes. It still stays in the key of D, but the rhythm guitar, instead of going, it starts doing this kind of open chord D ringy thing that sounds like. And then it kind of does that.
Is
thing.
It straddling into D minor kind of stuff there?
It is. Actually.
It is. So it's kind of making that. Oh, you ready? And I get to bust out some music terms. It's going to the. It's not the relative minor, because the relative minor of D would actually be B minor. It would be the. Oh no! I forgot the word. Oh. It's relative minor and Okay, out there, Track Talk listeners, if you know the other type of minor, the other
phone into the show now.
It's parallel minor. Or it's the parallel key. Excuse me. It's the parallel minor.
Yes.
Parallel minor, I think. Yes, but yes, Track Talk podcast listeners, feel free to correct us, and you could tweet us at the Track Talk Pod, and you can hashtag know what key you're talking about, Matty. That's a big hashtag, but that's the hashtag for that. So it straddles into that kind of D minor, into the parallel minor key. So it's cool. It's cool because it's totally this kind of like funky, bluesy, very major thing all the way up until that part.
Yeah, and then that's the part where the saxophone's still soloing, Bobby Keys is still doing his thing, but then it, the mood, the background color of this thing changes, and then it moves in a different direction.
It gets into that section. It sounds like Santana walked in the door and started playing, and the background sounded like it was all Santana.
Yeah, and up until that last part, Mick Taylor, you hear him, but he's really kind of just helping to echo what Keith Richards is doing, but it's on that Santana part where he kind of rips in and goes. And then you've got Keith's guitar, which at this point has gone from doing this kind of ringing to it's just doing like these rhythmic chops. He's like,
kind of stabby, kind of like
stabby, kind of choppy things.
Yeah.
While Mick Taylor's doing this kind of Santana-esque, just beautiful melodic bending.
It's absolutely
solo.
unexpected for a Rolling Stones tune.
Yeah,
for sure. They get around through that another time, and then at the end of it, it kind of just hits those last chords, and then kind of just ends. It's not a huge ending. It kind of.
There's a little build up, which actually I can't do on the guitar right now. I used to know it, but the end of it kind of does this build up that goes like
yeah, kind of like a little repeating motif, and then it kind of ends it.
There you go.
Yeah,
he's got the fancy word for the feelings I have in my head.
It's really killer. It's super killer.
I love it.
Let's dive a little bit into the theory, into the chords here. So
sure.
The that opening riff, one more time, if you wouldn't mind, just playing a little bit of that opening riff. That's great, and a lot of that's just sitting on just the D.
Yes, it is, and the nice thing about playing these songs is that you really need to be in the open G, because for those music guitar nerds out there, this riff is just coming off of 3 strings, and the way you're tuning it, it's like in the shape of a power chord. So you've got the 1 and the 5.
It's already built in.
So. And the great thing about the open G is that you use less fingers to do it. So to make a sound where you would have to use 3 of your fingers, you can use just 1 and 2.
That's usually the issue I have. I know whenever I play those kind of bluesy tunes is, I got small Hobbit fingers, so I can't get that stretch for that 5. Like I could get that stretch for like the 5 fret kind of blues thing, but it hurt. Like for me, it hurts.
It hurts.
Like
the blues should hurt.
The blues should hurt.
So you're doing it right as far as I'm concerned.
I'm so lame, but I get exactly what you're talking about. So that tuning helps get that same sound, but it's just easier to play and gives you kind of like different options too.
Exactly, and Keith Richards at this time fell in love with this tuning, and in some ways, it does make playing the rhythm guitar roll easier because you just use less fingers. But it can also, if you really take time with it, it can almost feel like a whole new instrument when you're learning, because it's like all different combinations you can do.
Right. So can you play through just that little verse section?
Yeah. So then, pretty much the verse, the guitar parts are pretty similar to the intro, just kind of more spaced out. So you got Mick Jagger going, can't you hear me knocking? Yeah, you got satin shoes. So pretty much what one of the guitars is doing, I think this is Mick Taylor's guitars, he's actually echoing the vocal melody on during the verse, like the can't you hear me knocking?
Yeah.
So that part gets thrown in there during the "Can't You Hear Me Knocking," kind
of like shout chorus.
The shout.
Yeah.
And then the guitar is kind of doing these little riffs, like these kind of fun little power chord shapes that.
Yeah, they're very cool. And then what's it playing when they get to the "Help Me, Baby" and "A Stranger," and also the "Hear Me Ringing Bell Tolls"?
So what that is that's 2 chords. You've got the G, and then you've got a G major, and then you've got C major, and pretty much this is what it sounds like on the what'd you call that? The chorus part, or the?
I guess you would call it kind of the chorus. Yeah, maybe a B section. And it's just going back and forth between the 2. Yeah, that's cool. Super simple. This is like 60s, 70s rock and roll, like four chords at the most. You're talking the 1 with D, the 1 major. G and C. You got G, which would be your 4, and then the C being your, I guess that'd be a flat 7. Yeah, in there. Or I guess it would also be, maybe you can even call it the 5 of 4. Either way, depends. Are you playing are you playing C? Is there C7? Is there a B flat when you're doing the C?
Yeah,
C's in there?
and so the way when you
Oh man, our non-music nerd fans are like, ooh, can we skip to the part where they talk about the Twitter handle? I'm talking about like B flat 7.
Yeah, I think it is a C7.
C7.
And as you said that, I was like going to show it on my guitar, but I'm like, wait, we're on a podcast.
Yeah. That would put that there. And then we talked about when it hits that section at the end where it was kind of noodling between D major and D minor.
Yeah,
it goes into that. So it's cool. It's really cool. I really enjoy what I heard with it. Kind of going. Was there anything else you want to add to the kind of chord progression, guitar stuff, production?
No. Although the one thing I will add is that I think to get nerdy again, I'm pretty sure that on this song, Keith Richards has the open G tuning. He also has the top string on the guitar removed. So, guitars all have 6 strings.
Right.
For a lot of these songs at open G, he had the top string, the low E string removed. And now just because he just didn't find it very useful when he had it in that tuning, pretty much.
So he would just have the 5 string.
Yeah, he would just remove the top one. And I believe this is one of those that it's the exact same thing. So
wow.
Yeah.
That's so bizarre.
Yeah.
But I guess all the greats really have like weird knacks when they're doing it. You mentioned the Jimi Hendrix thing. Didn't Jimmy play it like the guitar upside down? Was that the way he played it?
Oh yeah, I mean he had different ways of playing
well,
the guitar tricky, but for him, he liked to have his guitar a half step down because it was easier to sing. It was easier to hit some of the certain notes for him.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Speaking of, I read another thing that Mick had said that the key was actually a little bit too high for him.
Right.
Did you read something in that?
Yeah, and it was a little too high for him, and his way of kind of combating that was he, had his influence when they were putting it all together. He just basically had his lead vocal
and harmonies.
Yeah. On the chorus, he had his lead vocal. Like his lead vocal gets really drowned on the chorus. Like you're mainly hearing the background, which is actually him and Keith. So that kind of drowns out what he's doing.
And kind of hides it. I thought he sounded great. He's that kind that like I put him in the same category as like a Bob Dylan type. Like he doesn't have to be great at singing. He just needs to get the point across, which every time he does.
Yeah.
And he needs to be a great performer, which he also is. So it's really cool. I wanted to kind of just talk about just these last 2 things here. Rolling Stone magazine listed this one as the number 25 in the 100 greatest guitar songs of all time.
Really?
Yes.
That is good to hear.
Yeah. And I think that was in the 2003, 2004 or something. So a little earlier 2000s. But, I don't think there've been that many great guitar songs since then. Like iconic at least. So I think they really nailed it.
Well, and then just the fact that it, when I think of that song, I also think of, like you said, the sax, the percussion in there. So to hear it as like that was chosen as like a guitar song, it was like one of the 50 greatest according to them.
It's very prominent because that riff at the top really, although Mick's playing at the end, that Santana type playing is really great. It's that Keith Richards guitar riff at the top that really sets the tone for the record, even though they don't go to it for the rest of the record. But this one's a bit of a journey, and I think that's great. Something we also like to talk about on the podcast are covers of these tunes. I went online, I couldn't find many covers of this. Is that partly because it's not as big of a tune as some of the other ones out there?
I mean, I think so. I think that's the reason why the Stones didn't maybe played this song twice after it was first released in concert, and then they didn't touch it for another 30 plus years because
they're not even covering their own song.
Yeah, they're not even. Rolling Stones, Can't You Hear Me Knocking? We're not doing that. No, it's too damn hard. Yeah, so I just think the fact that it just for them themselves, it was hard to recreate live. I mean, I think that explains why. Although I believe correct me if I'm wrong, I believe Fish may have covered this song in
okay.
concert. I know that there was a band, I want to say Fish, spelled with a P, P-H.
That Fish.
That
okay,
Fish,
okay,
yeah.
okay.
I want to say that they actually covered a whole Stones album, either this one or Exile on Main Street in concert.
Cool.
So I think they've done this.
That's a cool thing.
Yeah.
Who did that just recently? We were talking about this, Shaun. Train covered one of Led Zeppelin's records completely.
Ooh,
yeah.
wow.
And Pat, the lead singer from Train, kills it. He's killing all those vocals on it, so it's really killer. What was the last thing I kind of wanted to get into? Actually, the covers. Yeah, that's it, man. What kind of like last thoughts do you have on this specific Rolling Stones? I'm gonna say a classic. Specific Rolling Stones classic.
Well, as a Rolling Stones fan, that makes me very happy to hear that. I love this song. It is a groovy movie, lyrically basic, just Stone song that just hits me where it counts.
Yes.
Yeah, I love this song.
Yeah. For me, the lyrics make, after kind of breaking them down, they actually make a little more sense. So I was happy to look at that. But really, it's made me kind of rethink my thoughts on the Rolling Stones, which was, okay, they're just kind of classic rock, and that's kind of it. And they are so that, and they are the epitome of that. That's why. But I do realize that it's so much more layered and more in depth than just kind of what I've heard previously too.
And what I will add, so this album came out in 71, Exile on Main Street came out in 72. In the summer of 72, they did a US tour. They released a live concert album called Ladies and Gentlemen. That is them at their best. I love this Stones record because it was them at their best. And if you ever want to see a great live performance of them, check out Ladies and Gentlemen, Rolling Stones. It's like a compilation of footage taken from like 4 nights that they performed in Texas. And, I mentioned that because, you're saying like you learned a lot about this band. Like you feel like you really have a different image of them now. Check out that. And, for all you listeners out there, check out that video footage and it'll definitely, it'll definitely stick in your mind. I love
That's
that.
cool.
I think it's the best.
That's exactly what this podcast is. Like, we should be talking about songs that people know, but I like talking about songs that I don't know.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you brought this one to the table. And once again, it's really opened my eyes up to the Stones. Let's go and take a minute. We'll get you set up, and we're gonna have you play a song for us right here live on the Track Talk podcast. So,
all right.
Brian, take it away.
Too fast, but I didn't mind it. Move a little too fast, but I didn't mind it. Try to take my time, but your lips were inviting. Try to take my time, but your hips were inviting. The timing was off, but you had second thoughts, and baby, you didn't have to go. And I wish you could have seen the kind of team we could have been. Oh, baby, you'll never know. I wish you could have stayed, but you could have at least said goodbye. Wish that you could have said goodbye. Brown-skinned beauty, you were a queen to me. Maybe that's where I went wrong, treating you like royalty. Try to make the best of the situation that wasn't meant to be. Gotta lick my wounds and keep going on my journey. The timing was off, but you had second thoughts, and baby, you didn't have to go. Well, I wish you could have seen the kind of team we could have been. Oh, baby, you'll never know. Well, I wish you could have stayed, but you could have at least said goodbye. Wish that you could have said goodbye. Instead, you hung me out to dry. Timing was off, but you had second thoughts, and baby, you didn't have to go. Well, I wish you could have seen the kind of team we could have been. Oh, baby, you'll never know. Well, I wish you could have stayed, but you could have at least said goodbye. Wish that you could have said goodbye. Instead, you hung me out to dry. Wish that you could have said goodbye.
All right. As we wrap up here, Brian, where can we find you online? Check out some of your videos, all that good stuff.
You can find me on YouTube at Brian Dillon 120. So that's spelled BrianDillon 120, and that's at YouTube. I finally have an Instagram.
Sweet.
You can see me at Brian Dill Pickle. So it's spelled like it sounds. I should probably change my YouTube to that, but right now that's my Instagram. So, and yeah, that is my extent of social media. I do have Facebook, but it's friends only.
Excellent. And you're not playing with anyone currently. You're just kind of hitting the mics.
No, just hitting the mics, doing my new songs, and yeah.
Excellent. Thanks to our producer Shaun Day.
Thank you, Shaun.
Yeah, thanks, Shaun. Welcome back. He missed out last week, so we're glad to have you back. Please rate and review the Track Talk podcast on iTunes. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe on your social media places and things. You can find audio of today's episode and previous episodes on SoundCloud, iTunes, and the podcast app. Video of today's performance with Brian and previous performances can be found on our YouTube channel, the Track Talk Podcast. For new episodes, updates, news, and photos, follow us on the Track Talk Podcast Facebook page. And if you have song ideas and song facts, or you just want to correct us on many of the different things we've talked about today and previously, or share your thoughts on Airheads, the popular Brendan Fraser film, we might cut that part out, so I might leave this part in, so you might not know what we're talking about at this point. You can tweet at us at the Track Talk Pod. No cast, just the Track Talk Pod. Thanks to our guest host, Brian Dillon. Any last words to leave our listeners, Brian?
Oh, hey, Matty, thank you for inviting me. I'm a huge fan, and keep the Track Talk podcast coming.
And as always, keep listening to music. Keep writing songs. This is the Track Talk Podcast with Matty, and we'll see you next time.